Cha Si-hyuk, known as the Bloody Shirt, was one of the most feared assassins. Cha Si-hyuk stood alone in the midst of a large group of killers, preparing to face them by himself. He had announced his decision to retire and give up everything. A man watched the scene from afar, wondering whether they should kill him now. Cha Si-hyuk moved swiftly, grabbing his weapon in preparation for battle. So did the other man. But at that moment, the head of the organization raised his hand, asking everyone to leave him alone. He expressed his desire to avoid spilling blood among them. The hero boarded the bus, heading home after finishing work. Cha Si-hyuk spoke with his wife over the phone, asking about their unborn child and expressing how much he missed them. His wife gently replied, saying the baby in her belly seemed eager for his return home, and then laughed as she asked what he was doing now. He told her he was looking at the ultrasound image of their awaited child. Suddenly, a strange man appeared, holding a knife and preparing to attack Cha Si-hyuk from behind. Cha Si-hyuk dodged the attack with lightning speed. The attacker hid behind one of the bus seats, while the wife, having heard a strange sound through the phone, asked what was happening. The passengers panicked and called for help from the police, while Cha Si-hyuk calmly faced the attacker. The attacker asked the passengers not to make any noise and ordered everyone off the bus. He pointed his knife at Cha Si-hyuk and told him to stay alone, while Cha Si-hyuk told his wife he would call her back later. The man began his attack again on Cha Si-hyuk, who stood calmly and steadily in place. Cha Si-hyuk was able to block the attacker's strike with ease. He then launched a powerful combat move that threw the attacker to the ground. The attacker hit the floor hard due to Cha Si-hyuk's blow. The attacker groaned in pain from the fierce strike, while Cha Si-hyuk asked about the man's identity and who sent him. The attacker mockingly replied that Cha Si-hyuk didn't know him and hinted that the company's employees were targeting him. Cha Si-hyuk was shocked to hear that his colleagues wanted him dead. The attacker threatened that he wouldn't survive if he chose to leave the company. Cha Si-hyuk tried to call his wife, but realized the call wasn't going through. Feeling deeply anxious, Cha Si-hyuk uttered his wife's name, Miju, in a tense state. At home, his wife was preparing food, wishing her husband would arrive soon. Suddenly, she heard the doorbell and went to see who it was, wondering about the visitor's identity. A strange man responded that he was her husband's colleague and had come to deliver something related to his retirement, leaving her surprised and full of questions. Cha Si-hyuk's wife entered the house, trying to get away from the strange man, but she collapsed to the ground in fear. She stretched out her hand, pleading with him to let her go, but he stood near her with a cold gaze. The man stepped closer and placed his knife near her neck, threatening her. Cha Si-hyuk rushed home, feeling that something terrible was happening. He tried calling his wife again, but the call didn't go through. He arrived home overwhelmed by anxiety and fear. He noticed marks on the floor that made him realize someone had broken into his house. He entered cautiously, silently following the traces. He was shocked to find the strange man sitting and waiting for him, who then told him he hadn't known he had a child. The man told Cha Si-hyuk that the child wasn't the only reason for his betrayal of the organization's leader, implying that the Cha he knew wouldn't care about such matters. Cha Si-hyuk noticed a large bloodstain on the floor and asked the man if the leader knew what had happened. The man replied that it was his own decision and told him to guess his intentions instead of asking. With a mocking smile, the man asked if the intended target was really dead. Rage flared in Cha Si-hyuk's eyes, and his face showed intense readiness for battle. The strange man's henchmen attacked Cha Si-hyuk, but he began fending them off with great force. He quickly disarmed one of them after delivering a powerful blow. Cha Si-hyuk fought skillfully against the entire group, striking them with rapid blows. One attacker was severely injured due to Cha Si-hyuk's combat strength. Cha retreated slightly up the stairs to avoid the rest of the attackers. He took advantage of another attack to grab one of the assailants and struck him hard, causing a deep wound. Cha Si-hyuk charged powerfully toward the strange man, who had been watching from a distance. But he was suddenly kicked hard by one of the opponents, sending him backward. However, the situation quickly changed again, and Cha Si-hyuk resumed his attack. He stepped forward calmly after regaining his balance. The strange man smiled calmly and said that Cha was finally starting to look like the person he once knew. Cha Si-hyuk stood, covered in blood, as the man called him by his infamous title, the Bloody Shirt. The strange man prepared for battle, saying it was finally his turn to play. He launched his attack quickly, delivering fierce blows toward Cha Si-hyuk. The strange man swung his knife dangerously close to Cha Si-hyuk. Cha Si-hyuk tried to dodge his opponent's attacks while fighting back with intense ferocity. Cha Si-hyuk continued to fight violently and powerfully against the strange man, skillfully deflecting his attacks. The hero launched a strong offensive move, lifting his opponent into the air and slamming him to the ground with force. The opponent tried to get up again, but Cha Si-hyuk struck him once more with great power. The intense fight between the two continued, with fierce blows exchanged from both sides. A severe wound appeared on the strange man's neck, and he began to feel pain and weakness. He tried to maintain his composure with a defiant smile despite the serious injury. He continued his attack without mercy, delivering deadly strikes to his opponent, who began to gradually retreat. The opponent was in intense pain, but still challenged Cha Si-hyuk with words despite his severe wounds. Cha Si-hyuk landed a very powerful blow to the strange man's face, knocking him onto the table. The strange man paused and admitted that he was no match for Cha Si-hyuk and that he couldn't stand against him. He asked Cha Si-hyuk to kill him, realizing his complete defeat in the fight. Cha Si-hyuk raised the knife high, preparing to fulfill the man's request. Cha Si-hyuk stabbed the strange man, ending his life with a final blow. The house looked like a crime scene, with corpses scattered everywhere. Cha Si-hyuk walked out slowly, leaving behind trails of blood and fallen victims. He began to remember his wife's hand wearing the wedding ring, next to the pregnancy test confirming her pregnancy. and the time they spent together looking at the image of their unborn child in a happy moment from the past, followed by the present where Cha Si-hyuk stood sorrowfully before his wife's corpse after her murder, contemplating her tragic end, one that he had caused. The scene shifted to the funeral home, where a picture of his deceased wife was placed. Cha Si-hyuk stood before her casket as he received a phone call, during which he told someone that some employees had broken into his home. The person on the phone asked if he had killed those employees. Cha Si-hyuk replied clearly that he had indeed killed them. The caller apologized to Cha Si-hyuk, saying it was the fault of his foolish subordinates. The organization's leader, Lee Kwang-won, affirmed that even a foolish person is still part of the family, but he no longer had a choice. The leader warned Cha Si-hyuk that assassins would be coming for him soon to finish the job. Cha Si-hyuk coldly replied that there was no need for that. He firmly declared that he would be the one going after them, with a hard stare and clear resolve. A wedding photo of Cha Si-hyuk and his wife appeared, later stained with blood due to the tragic events they endured. Cha Si-hyuk walked through his home, surrounded by an atmosphere of sorrow and darkness, remembering his former life. He decided to leave, affirming to himself that he would return soon, hinting at his final decision to confront them. He left through the doorway of the room, where bloodstains were still scattered in front of it, surrounded by an eerie silence. Elsewhere, a man was peeling an apple with a knife and asked his colleague about the head office's request for more men. The other man responded irritably, sharply questioning why so many men were being summoned just to chase down one man. The men at the office discussed the team that had been completely wiped out, mentioning that their boss himself had ordered the cleanup of the battlefield. One man angrily criticized the skills of their colleagues from the head office, calling them useless people who rely solely on their connections. Another replied that it was natural because the enemy was the Bloody Shirt, and noted that the company had chosen the wrong opponent this time. He spoke of how dangerous the Bloody Shirt was, describing him as a legend among assassins and warning that his actions would inspire others to follow him. The man asserted that even a small mistake could spark an all-out war because of just one person. His colleague asked him not to exaggerate or over-dramatize the situation, saying rumors always tend to get blown out of proportion. The man sarcastically remarked again, asking what one person could possibly do alone against an entire company. Suddenly everyone noticed a stranger had entered the office, and the men began to feel tense. Fear showed on their faces when they realized the man standing before them was Cha Si-hyuk. Cha Si-hyuk calmly asked if their boss was present. The men grew confused, wondering why the Bloody Shirt came to them instead of heading straight to the head office. One of them sarcastically commented, picking up a knife, saying the timing of his arrival was just perfect. One of the men approached Cha Si-hyuk mockingly, asking if he really had come alone. Anger flashed in the men's eyes, and one praised Cha Si-hyuk's boldness for breaking into their office by himself. The man ordered his subordinates to lock the office doors in preparation for what might happen. An elderly man using a cane intervened, asking everyone to stop before something serious occurred. The old man told Cha Si-hyuk that things had gotten quite troublesome because of his recent actions. He asked his men to understand the situation, though some were angry, and insisted that Cha Si-hyuk should not be let off without punishment. The elderly man calmly requested someone to serve Cha Si-hyuk coffee, considering him a guest. Cha Si-hyuk sat down, and the elderly man asked why he had come to visit him at this particular time. He asked again why Cha Si-hyuk had come to see someone as old and forgotten as him. Cha Si-hyuk ignored the question, and instead asked whether the man still had people in the head office. Cha Si-hyuk ordered the elderly man to gather his men and prepare a car. He spoke seriously, saying he would kill President Lee Kwang-won for him. The men in the room grew angry at his words and demanded to know what the hell he was talking about. The elderly man placed his coffee cup on the table and calmly wondered if it was already too late. He confirmed to Cha Si-hyuk that the succession battle had ended long ago and that he was now living a life no different from exile after being pushed out by Kwang-won and the Neville family. The elderly man continued speaking to Cha Si-hyuk, saying that his old strength was no longer there. He went on to suggest that things would be better for him if his men simply handed him over to Kwang-won. Cha Si-hyuk muttered under his breath, calling the old man a bastard. He kept mocking him, accusing him of still being afraid of his younger brother, and asked if he was scared that his other leg would be cut off too. The large man, named Park Dukman, became enraged by the insult and stood up angrily, confronting Cha Si-hyuk. Park Dukman grabbed him by the shirt, saying he had never liked him from the start. Park offered to take care of Cha Si-hyuk himself, arguing that letting him go unpunished would set a bad example for the men. He forcefully dragged Cha Si-hyuk out of the room, threatening to kill him. But before they made it out, Cha Si-hyuk suddenly stabbed Park Dukman from behind. Then he raised his knife for another strike, while Dukman was left in shock by what was happening. Cha Si-hyuk lunged forward with speed and fury, attacking Dukman, leaving the office men stunned and screaming in panic. Park Dukman dropped to his knees, writhing in pain from the powerful stab. He let out a loud cry of pain as he received another blow from Cha Si-hyuk. Cha grabbed him and dragged him forcefully in front of everyone, who were frozen in terror at the scene. Cha Si-hyuk continued his brutal and bloody assault, consumed by intense rage. He slammed Park Dukman's head hard against the table in front of the elderly man. The old man was stunned by the sheer violence of the attack he witnessed. Cha delivered another vicious blow to Dukman, right in front of the elderly man, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Park Dukman collapsed to the ground, while Cha Si-hyuk stood staring at the rest of the men, who were paralyzed with shock. Cha Si-hyuk turned to the elderly man named Lee Bong-won and demanded a clear answer now that he had seen enough. He stepped closer and told the old man that he should have been the one to take care of his younger brother instead. Then, with a cold and terrifying look, he asked if the old man would support him in carrying out his plan. The elderly man remained silent, his eyes filled with fear and deep confusion. The scene shifted to the company's main building at night, where several people were gathered. One of the men standing before the boss noted that some individuals had yet to arrive. Deputy Choi Il-ho, known as Zodiac Ox, said that the trio still hadn't shown up. Director Song Jae-eon, nicknamed Zodiac Rat, sarcastically remarked on their delay, despite being summoned directly by the president. Director Park Soon-jae, known as Zodiac Monkey, added that the trio had some serious nerve to be this late. At that moment, the trio entered the room, wondering why the president had summoned them now, after previously avoiding them due to the high cost of their services. One of them added that they were the most trustworthy among everyone. Another asked the others to remain silent and show respect in the presence of the company president. He spoke to the president, saying it had been a long time since their last meeting. Silence and anticipation filled the room as everyone looked toward the president. The president sharply asked whether they were capable of carrying out the task assigned to them. The leader of the trio confidently replied, requesting only the support of Team A to complete the mission. He affirmed with clear confidence that they would definitely take care of it. Elsewhere, the elderly man told Cha Si-hyuk that once Lee Kwang-won was killed, Neville would inevitably come. He added that he was fully prepared for that, and then asked whether Cha Si-hyuk was ready as well. Cha Si-hyuk replied with a firm look that he only needed the proper support. He continued as he left the room, saying that if the old man truly wanted to kill his brother, he must offer full support. Then Cha Si-hyuk exited the room, stating that they would meet again at the company. The elderly man remained seated in the room in despair and began to laugh quietly. He covered his face in frustration, slowly realizing that things were beginning to change. Meanwhile, Cha Si-hyuk sped off in his car, heading toward his next destination. He noticed through the car's mirror that other vehicles were chasing him. The other cars began accelerating, trying to trap Cha Si-hyuk. Inside the pursuing vehicle, members of the trio casually chatted about buying a new washing machine, showing their cold demeanor. They argued over whether to buy entertainment devices and games instead of focusing on the chase. They kept joking about household chores and how they would divide them. The trio's leader interrupted their conversation and told them to focus on the mission, promising a reward if they performed well. He explained that their primary target was to eliminate the bloody shirt. Suddenly, one of the men in the car noticed that Cha Si-hyuk was heading directly toward them in a dangerous way. The leader ordered the driver to speed up and try to avoid the collision. The chase turned into a violent car confrontation between the two sides. Tension and intense anger filled the trio as they struggled to control the situation. One of them screamed in frustration as they nearly collided with Cha Si-hyuk's car. The trio's vehicles tried to avoid the crash, which caused them to lose control on the road. One of them shouted that their opponent was completely insane. He ordered everyone to get out of the vehicles immediately. Cha Si-hyuk's car stopped in the middle of the road, and he stepped out holding a knife, ready for the upcoming confrontation. The men began attacking Cha Si-hyuk, confident that he was alone and wouldn't be able to resist them. Cha Si-hyuk launched himself fiercely at the attackers, fighting them all at once. Inside the car, one of the trio said their team was retreating, but the other responded with overconfidence, claiming the men outside were just amateurs, and that even he could take them all on by himself. His brother mocked his overconfidence, while the leader of the trio urged them to stay alert, warning that this night could be the last for one of them. The leader added firmly that they must operate in the usual way and not let their guard down. The three walked toward the battlefield, reaffirming their unity and collective strength. The trio appeared advancing toward Cha Si-hyuk, emphasizing that they worked together as one team. Cha Si-hyuk continued to fight viciously, having already knocked many men to the ground and filled the area with blood. The trio's leader stood calmly and ordered his men to kill Cha Si-hyuk immediately. The trio charged toward Cha Si-hyuk in a highly coordinated and dangerous assault. But Cha Si-hyuk already knew that these three were known for their synchronized attacks that had to be approached with caution. The trio initiated a powerful, well-coordinated attack that was difficult to block. Their skills were clearly displayed in their unified and simultaneous offensive. Cha Si-hyuk skillfully blocked a strong attack from one of the three. He was then targeted by a violent strike from above, as one of them sneaked behind him into his blind spot. Cha Si-hyuk received a serious injury to his back from the surprise attack. He was badly wounded, blood flowing from his body, as the attacker remarked that this was just the beginning. Despite his injury, Cha Si-hyuk managed to counterattack and forcefully threw the attacker to the ground. One of the trio's weapons fell to the ground after he lost control during the fight. Even with a severe injury in his back, Cha Si-hyuk remained standing with difficulty, realizing that dragging out the fight would be dangerous for him. Meanwhile, the trio tried to finish the fight quickly, taking advantage of Cha Si-hyuk's serious injury. The trio appeared checking on each other and mocking the situation, while one of them was struggling to get up from the ground. One of them shouted in anger, demanding the others finish off Cha Si-hyuk instead of wasting time. Another round of coordinated attacks began, with two of the trio charging at Cha Si-hyuk swiftly. Cha Si-hyuk faced a joint attack that was extremely fast and powerful. One of the trio rushed toward Cha Si-hyuk with his weapon in a flash. He was furious and screamed as he attacked Cha Si-hyuk in a frenzied manner. Cha Si-hyuk couldn't avoid the strike and was hit in the thigh. The trio launched another group attack on Cha Si-hyuk, attempting to take full advantage of his multiple wounds. The battle continued intensely, with both sides exchanging violent blows in an effort to gain the upper hand. Cha Si-hyuk began to feel extremely weak due to the heavy blood loss and realized he wouldn't last much longer if the fight continued like this. He noticed that two of the trio were distracting him, while the third was preparing to strike from his blind spot. He realized that even a moment of lost focus could be fatal for him. His sharp eyes searched for any opportunity he could exploit. The attack from the trio intensified as they began to coordinate to bring him down quickly. Cha Si-hyuk kept looking for the right moment under the tight pressure. One of the trio asked what they would do after this fight, but his brother reminded him not to get careless, despite Cha Si-hyuk's apparent weakness. Cha Si-hyuk managed to dodge a powerful strike from one of the trio during the fierce exchange of blows. One of them felt the situation should clearly be in their favor, but his instincts as a professional killer warned him of the danger their opponent posed. He realized the deadly look in Cha Si-hyuk's eyes showed he was still a major threat. Cha Si-hyuk was fighting like a wounded beast, his eyes set on taking down his enemies at any cost. This caused one of the trio to be shocked by Cha Si-hyuk's strength and ferocity, despite his critical condition and proximity to death. He felt as though they were fighting on the edge of a cliff and realized how dangerous the situation they had walked into was. They decided it would be better to proceed with more caution and avoid reckless attacks on Cha Si-hyuk. One of them shouted in frustration and rage over how hard it was to kill Cha Si-hyuk. Suddenly, the trio's leader screamed at his younger teammate, trying to warn him after he recklessly charged forward. But the hasty attack led the younger brother straight into Cha Si-hyuk's grasp. Cha Si-hyuk managed to catch and hold him in a brutal and deadly grip. The man began screaming in pain as Cha Si-hyuk landed more deadly blows right in front of his two shocked teammates. The other two pleaded with Cha Si-hyuk to stop for a moment and hold back. They dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender, asking Cha Si-hyuk to spare their younger brother's life, promising to give him anything he wanted. But their younger brother objected, urging them to kill Cha Si-hyuk and stop begging on his behalf. The trio's leader threatened Cha Si-hyuk, warning he would deeply regret it if he made a wrong move now. But Cha Si-hyuk completely ignored the threat and killed the younger brother with a swift, powerful strike. As he fell dead before the shocked and stunned eyes of his comrades, Cha Si-hyuk looked at them and said if either of them wanted to survive, they'd better be ready. Cha Si-hyuk told them to pick up their weapons again and prepare for the next round. The two men attacked Cha Si-hyuk again in a desperate attempt to survive. But Cha Si-hyuk evaded their attack quickly and gracefully, causing one of them to lose his balance. The violent assault forced the trio back toward the car, and they collided with it during the fight. The brutal and intense exchange of attacks between Cha Si-hyuk and his opponents continued in an extremely fierce confrontation. Cha Si-hyuk launched his final attack on one of the trio, delivering a decisive, fatal blow that dropped him dead. The other man screamed in panic, calling out to his brother after witnessing him fall before his eyes. Cha Si-hyuk delivered an extremely powerful kick, violently knocking down his final opponent. The man collapsed to the ground in severe pain, realizing how dire his situation had become. Cha Si-hyuk stood over the last of the trio, ready to finish him off once and for all. And indeed, Cha Si-hyuk killed him, ending the legend of the trio in that fight. Cha Si-hyuk's car sped away from the scene, leaving behind a bloody aftermath. Elsewhere, it was announced that Team A's mission had completely failed, and that 18 people, including the trio, had been killed at the scene. It was also announced that the whereabouts of the bloody shirt were currently unknown, and everyone was ordered to remain on high alert. Later, the guards announced that the bloody shirt's location had finally been identified. An official urgently asked where exactly he was, and the security officer hesitated to respond. Cha Si-hyuk was standing in front of the company's headquarters, covered in blood, and ready for the next confrontation. The security officer then confirmed to one of the company officials that Cha Si-hyuk was indeed standing outside the company. The team leader was shocked and furiously asked if he was really standing in front of the company. He demanded that everyone try to delay Cha Si-hyuk temporarily and announced that he would go down personally to face him. One of the company men asked his colleague whether they too would be joining the confrontation. The team leader declared that everyone needed to prepare because Cha Si-hyuk had already arrived. He told his men, those who had previously worked with Cha Si-hyuk, that they knew very well what his presence meant. The team leader's expression made it clear he understood the danger of the coming battle. Cha Si-hyuk stood firmly as security guards gathered around him, preparing to fight. The head of security received a phone call from the executive director asking him about the current situation. The head of security replied that everything was under control, while the executive director seemed nervous. The executive director ordered that Cha Si-hyuk be brought into the building quietly, noting that many eyes were watching them at that moment. The head of security ordered his men to clear a path for Cha Si-hyuk as instructed by upper management. The guards nervously made way for Cha Si-hyuk to enter. Cha Si-hyuk entered the company building while everyone watched him in silence and extreme caution. One of the security officers who knew Cha Si-hyuk said to him that things shouldn't have gotten this far. Another man, named Man-su-ya, approached Cha Si-hyuk and said he'd heard what happened, adding that those who are meant to live must find a way to stay alive. He warned Cha Si-hyuk that entering the building now was suicide, as he could barely see due to his current condition. Cha Si-hyuk ignored Man-su-ya's warning and thanked him, saying that his wife, Mi-ju, really loved the baby clothes he had sent them before. Cha Si-hyuk placed his bloody hand on Man-su-ya's shoulder, the man who had previously warned him, and quietly thanked him for the warning. Man-su-ya stood still, watching Cha Si-hyuk walk away in silence, realizing his unwavering resolve to move forward. Cha Si-hyuk entered the building, covered in heavy blood, but no one stopped him. However, some men began preparing to follow him from a distance inside the building. Security guards continued moving cautiously behind him, fully aware of the danger. Cha Si-hyuk entered the elevator in total silence, standing as the doors closed, drenched in blood in a terrifying manner. When the elevator reached its destination floor, he was joined by a number of armed men. Cha Si-hyuk asked them sarcastically if they had time to waste. He added coldly that it would be best for them to finish things quickly. The elevator doors closed on all of them, and a fierce battle erupted inside. In the executive office, the executive director calmly inquired about the status of Li Bongwan's men. His assistant replied that all of Li Bongwan's men's weapons had been confiscated and that they had been gathered in the meeting room, adding that they wouldn't be able to leave until the end of the day. The assistant cautiously asked if there was a reason for taking such extreme precautions. The executive director explained that he had confirmed information that Cha Si-hyuk had met with the elder, Li Bongwan. He acknowledged that to others his reaction might seem like an overreaction. He began telling an old story from before he took on his current position. In the past, the executive director had stood with the elder Li Bongwan, who had asked him to deal with the case of Sunwoo Construction. Kwangwan asked in surprise if he really meant for him to handle that job specifically. Li Bongwan coldly ordered him to crush those people from the start so that they would never dare to interfere with their project again. He explained that their father had high hopes for them, all while he was torturing another man severely in front of him. He then lifted a heavy object to strike the bound man. After that, he looked at the executive director Kwangwan and instructed him to carry out the mission successfully, clearly signaling that failure or hesitation was not an option. In another scene, Kwangwan and Cha Si-hyuk arrived at a building, with Kwangwan saying this was his first time being in such a position. He expressed surprise that a rookie had been assigned to back him up on the mission. The man told Cha Si-hyuk not to do anything that day, underestimating his capabilities. They entered a room full of people, all of whom watched their arrival cautiously. Cha Si-hyuk's sharp gaze stood out as he entered the room alongside Kwangwan, fully aware of the danger. Kwangwan stepped forward and introduced himself to those present as Vice President Li Kwangwan. One of the attendees asked why President Li Bongwan hadn't come to the meeting himself. The man in the red shirt began speaking to Vice President Li Kwangwan, demanding that he bring President Li Bongwan, as he had nothing to say to him. He continued coldly, mocking him and calling him ridiculous and unworthy. The man in the red shirt lit a cigarette and told them their project would be taken over, and they had better accept that reality. His men began moving quickly, preparing for something to happen, and the tension in the room escalated. The man in the red shirt placed a document in front of Li Kwangwan and demanded that he place a seal there. Cha Si-hyuk began moving toward the man in the red shirt quietly. The red-shirted man noticed his approach and sarcastically asked whether he wanted to read the contract or not. Suddenly, Cha Si-hyuk launched a brutal and bloody assault on him, shocking everyone. The vice president's eyes widened in shock as he witnessed the sudden and violent attack unfold before him. Cha Si-hyuk grabbed the vice president's assistant by the head and sharply told him to listen and learn well. Cha smashed the assistant's head into the glass table with incredible force, shattering it violently. He continued attacking him savagely, repeating threatening words. Then, with bloodshot, furious eyes, Cha glared at the man and told him this was the proper way to greet others. His men became enraged and rushed toward Cha Si-hyuk, shouting in anger. Cha Si-hyuk, in turn, began fighting them all at once, delivering extremely powerful blows. He delivered a series of fatal strikes, completely dominating the situation. Vice President Lee stood frozen in shock as he watched the men fall one after another before his eyes. Then he appeared holding a paper that contained personal data on several individuals. He quietly left the scene alongside Cha Si-hyuk, leaving behind bodies strewn across the floor. The vice president scolded his assistant for his reckless and ill-considered actions, saying the enemy outnumbered them and was armed, especially since the opponents had brought more assassins than had been previously agreed upon. The vice president harshly questioned Cha Si-hyuk on why he acted so recklessly. Cha Si-hyuk replied confidently, saying he never once believed he would lose that confrontation. Elsewhere, Li Kwang explained why someone like Cha Si-hyuk was so dangerous. He clarified that Cha Si-hyuk never entered a fight unless he was confident he would win it, regardless of his condition or abilities. He also never engaged in any battle he felt he might lose from the start. He added that Cha Si-hyuk was the kind of person who always came out victorious in any confrontation he entered. In another scene, someone spoke on the phone, saying he was still on standby and just waiting for the order. Other men appeared nearby, waiting for instructions to carry out the mission. On the other end of the call was Lee Dong-wan, who spoke with a serious expression, saying it was time for them to begin as well. The men began storming the building, with their leader Lee Dong-wan authorizing the use of lethal force if necessary. The elevator door opened on the 41st floor to reveal a guard brutally murdered inside. Cha Si-hyuk stepped out of the elevator calmly, leaving the corpse behind and blood trails across the floor. The security guards moved with fear and caution, and some began shouting for others to retreat and not rush into confronting Cha Si-hyuk. One of the guards yelled angrily at the others not to push or advance as he moved toward Cha Si-hyuk with a knife. Cha Si-hyuk and the man clashed, exchanging fast and violent blows. Cha Si-hyuk managed to inflict serious injuries on the man's arm, who screamed in agony. Cha continued attacking with power and brutality, delivering severe wounds as the man screamed in pain. The man collapsed to his knees in extreme pain in front of Cha Si-hyuk, unable to continue fighting. Cha Si-hyuk grabbed the man by the neck forcefully, as the man began to choke and gasp desperately for air. Then Cha Si-hyuk hurled the man violently across the room, killing him instantly amid everyone's shock. The remaining men began to panic but tried to rally each other by saying he was just one madman. They all charged at Cha Si-hyuk at once, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. Cha Si-hyuk's blood-red eyes flared with anger as he confidently prepared to take on all the attackers. In the organization leader's office, one of his aides asked if the reserve team should now be deployed due to the overwhelming numbers. The organization leader replied confidently that war isn't about numbers, it's about who takes the initiative first. Leader Lee Dong-wan confidently asked his aide if he thought he could face Cha Si-hyuk directly if he were standing in front of him right now. Meanwhile, Cha Si-hyuk continued to fight with violence and brutality, holding one of the men as he prepared to stab him. Lee Dong-wan continued, saying the security guards there were just salaried employees, and regardless of their love for money, they wouldn't risk their lives for it. He added that the bloody scene unfolding was proof of Cha Si-hyuk's strength and danger, especially for those who had seen him fight before. Anyone who had seen Cha Si-hyuk in combat would understand the deadly consequences of facing him, because the result is always death. Despite their natural fear, some men still held their weapons and didn't back down from facing Cha Si-hyuk. The men gathered densely around Cha Si-hyuk, even though they knew he was an extremely dangerous opponent. Suddenly, someone burst into the scene shouting that Lee Bong-wan's men had also begun their attack. The security guards grew confused by the new attack and angrily questioned why Lee Bong-wan's men were interfering when their objective was only to fight Cha Si-hyuk. Lee Bong-wan's men entered the building with calm yet firm resolve, increasing the disarray among their enemies. The commander of Lee Bong-wan's forces loudly declared that everyone needed to have full confidence and execute the attack with all their might. Lee Bong-wan's men launched a fierce and rapid assault, fully prepared to turn the tide of the battle. Elsewhere, Lee Kwang commented that things were finally starting to get interesting. He had gathered with a special group known as the 12 Zodiacs, who confirmed their full readiness to receive his orders. Lee Kwang began assigning tasks to his men and ordered 2 of them, named Monkey and Pig, to head to the lower level to defend it. He announced that he would give each of them $1 billion as a reward for their efforts. Then he instructed the others to kill Cha Si-hyuk on sight without hesitation. He added that a massive reward of $10 billion would go to whoever succeeded in this mission. The president declared that he personally wanted to kill Cha Si-hyuk himself, but promised a special promotion to anyone who could bring him in alive. The men began preparing and moving out, with the clear rule that there would be no shared rewards. The winner would take everything. The group began advancing with full force, aware of the dangerous situation. Elsewhere, the security guards noticed the arrival of the 12 Zodiacs team and wondered if they had come to assist them. One of the Zodiacs approached Cha Si-hyuk and said that what he had done had gone far beyond any limits, and there was no turning back now. He continued, saying the situation was disgraceful and questioned how many people had to die because of him. Cha Si-hyuk responded coldly, picking up a knife from beside a corpse, and asked them how much they had been paid to fight him. The Zodiacs were surprised by the question and began to feel uneasy. Cha Si-hyuk continued furiously, saying the amount had better be huge to make what was coming worth it. Some of the men began to grumble upon learning that the Zodiac team was being paid separately, which sparked resentment and anger over the unfair treatment. One of the Zodiacs stepped forward angrily, telling Cha Si-hyuk he seemed eager to die. He added with fury that he would gladly grant him that wish. A brutal and extremely violent confrontation began between Cha Si-hyuk and the Zodiac fighter, who launched a fierce attack. Cha Si-hyuk charged into the battle at lightning speed, delivering deadly blows to his opponent. The intense battle continued as Cha Si-hyuk took down his enemies one by one. One of the Zodiacs used a sharp weapon to launch an attack on Cha Si-hyuk, but Cha Si-hyuk dodged it and landed a fatal strike on the Zodiac. Another Zodiac fighter was fatally wounded at Cha Si-hyuk's hands. One man attempted a group attack, screaming in rage as he charged. The men began attacking Cha Si-hyuk from all directions. Cha Si-hyuk defended himself against the fierce group assault, displaying exceptional combat and defensive skills despite his dangerous condition. One of them launched a massive iron chain, trying to strike Cha Si-hyuk with it. The man screamed in anger, demanding Cha Si-hyuk die as the chain flew toward him at high speed. Cha Si-hyuk dodged the attack with stunning speed and counterattacked, stabbing the man in the head with a knife. Although Cha Si-hyuk was in pain from a foot injury sustained earlier in the fight with the trio, it didn't stop him from continuing the battle. One man fell back in fear, retreating and screaming in terror, begging Cha Si-hyuk not to come any closer. The man sat on the floor, terrified, staring at the blood-soaked Cha Si-hyuk slowly approaching him. Then he screamed in panic, announcing that the president had placed a $10 billion reward for anyone who killed Cha Si-hyuk. The other security guards were shocked by this major revelation and angrily questioned whether their superiors had kept this from them. The panicked man shouted, urging the others to kill Cha Si-hyuk quickly to claim the reward. One of the security guards responded, saying he should have told them from the beginning. Then they would have fought by his side. They stood by, silently watching the scene without intervening, as the man pleaded with them to save him from Cha Si-hyuk's grasp. Cha Si-hyuk spoke calmly, mocking the $10 billion sum, noting that the president must be truly desperate. He challenged the guards with calm confidence, telling them it was time to try earning some money by fighting him. Cha Si-hyuk added with a tone of defiance that he was the only one they needed to kill. Cha Si-hyuk stood alone against a large number of men, sarcastically commenting that the fight seemed doable for them. Meanwhile, on the first floor, another major battle broke out between the organization's men and Lee Bong-wan's team. Zodiac Dog appeared, quickly and powerfully killing one of the enemies. Zodiac Rooster and Zodiac Pig were also shown attacking their opponents together. Likewise, Zodiac Monkey appeared, delivering a deadly blow to one of the men. The Zodiac Warrior stood ready to continue fighting with full force, without retreat. The Zodiac leader ordered Zodiac Dog to take control of the stairs and prevent Lee Bong-wan's men from advancing upward. He also commanded Zodiac Rooster and Zodiac Pig to block the entrance to stop more attackers from entering. Zodiac Dog confidently declared he would handle this man himself. A mysterious man from Lee Bong-wan's team appeared, wearing a red suit and entering the battle with calm and confidence. Inside the elevator, one of the security guards nervously asked if they were really going to fight Cha Si-hyuk. The team leader calmly replied that the president had announced a 10 billion reward for killing Cha Si-hyuk and added that anyone unwilling to participate could step aside. The elevator stopped at the 41st floor, and the doors opened. The guards rushed out of the elevator as soon as the doors opened, charging into battle with great enthusiasm. One man inside the elevator was shocked as he witnessed the bloody scene ahead. The men began fighting wildly and loudly, shouting to claim the 10 billion first. The battle grew more intense as everyone fought to win the reward, directing their full assault toward Cha Si-hyuk. Cha Si-hyuk faced a violent and extremely dangerous onslaught, with knives flying toward him from every direction. He realized he was in an open space with no obstacles to use for cover. It was nearly impossible for him to dodge all those attacks in such a situation. Cha Si-hyuk found himself in a very difficult position, completely surrounded, describing the scene as utterly unfavorable for him. The men charged toward Cha Si-hyuk, shouting with excitement that they were close to victory and had to keep the pressure on to kill him. They surrounded Cha Si-hyuk from every side, screaming "Die!" as he stood bloodied and wounded in their midst. In a shocking turn, one of the men intervened to save Cha Si-hyuk and stop the attack. The man fell to the ground, stunning the others with the unexpected shift in events. The men froze in confusion and looked toward the team leader. The leader shouted angrily, trying to stop them, asking how many people had to die before this battle ended. He furiously asked if they were really going to keep killing each other over the president's insane orders, warning that they could end up like Cha Si-hyuk if they retired the wrong way. He raised his voice, saying the president wasn't someone to trust, and that even the reward wasn't guaranteed. He strongly suggested they stop fighting immediately, but some looked hesitant and uncertain about his decision. One man shouted angrily, asking why human emotions were showing up now, insisting their job was to kill for money, nothing more. Other men accused him of making excuses to back out and claim the reward for himself, especially now that they were so close to winning. Doubt began to spread among the group, as one questioned the suspicious timing of the team leader's sudden appearance. Two men shouted in furious anger, accusing him and others of cowardice and betrayal, insisting they all needed the money, not just him. The men began yelling hysterically, loudly accusing each other of betrayal again and again. Amid the chaos, one man ordered his group to kill the others as well, signaling the start of infighting. Cha Si-hyuk seized the opportunity and swiftly attacked one of the men, shocking everyone. He began moving at lightning speed through the crowd, striking down everyone in his path despite his injuries. Cha Si-hyuk managed to reach the emergency exit, groaning in pain and barely holding himself together. The men shouted angrily behind him, yelling at each other to stop him from escaping. The team leader gave a sharp order to intercept him immediately. The guards pushed forward, chasing after Cha Si-hyuk and trying to stop him by force. They rushed out the door, following Cha Si-hyuk's trail, shouting that he was there. Cha Si-hyuk paused at the staircase, barely able to stand, preparing himself for another battle. The men charged at him, screaming that he was nearly dead and that they had to finish him now. Cha Si-hyuk fought them with ferocity despite his severe weakness and deep wounds, managing to bring some of them down. Despite the heavy blows he took, Cha Si-hyuk kept fighting, delivering fatal injuries to more of his enemies. One of the men screamed in furious rage, demanding that Cha Si-hyuk stop resisting and just die already. The bloody and violent battle continued on the stairs, with many men falling dead in the clash. Some of the men began retreating in fear and panic from Cha Si-hyuk's savagery, while others continued pressing forward. The fury and terror were clear in everyone's eyes as they charged at him in a final attempt to take him down. One of the men screamed in rage as he charged at Cha Si-hyuk, shouting and trying to kill him. But in the next moment, the man fell to the ground after being taken down by Cha Si-hyuk, his knife falling far from him. Cha Si-hyuk's eyes were sharp and cold as he stared at his opponents, who were shaken by his strength. He stood atop a massive pile of corpses, making it extremely difficult for the attackers to approach him. The men struggled to climb due to the sheer number of bodies piled on the staircase. 3 men stood at the bottom, feeling as if the stairs had grown impossibly high out of fear. One of them panicked and tried to calm the others, begging them not to rush toward Cha Si-hyuk. The men climbed the stairs with extreme caution, trying not to trip over the many corpses. Suddenly, one of them realized their numbers had greatly decreased without anyone noticing, sending panic through him. Cha Si-hyuk stood at the top, severely wounded but still fighting, coldly telling them to keep coming. During the fight, Cha Si-hyuk angrily questioned one man who seemed too hesitant in front of him. He repeated his command in anger as the man began begging, saying they were wrong and pleading with him to let them go. But Cha Si-hyuk ignored his begging with cold indifference and once again told him to keep advancing. The men began pleading in desperation, saying he had already killed enough, begging him to spare them this time. Cha Si-hyuk calmly and coldly replied that there was no such thing as mercy in this situation. Then he continued, saying that if they wanted to survive, they should pick up their knives and try to kill him.